All right, so today for our skill builder, I have to be honest, I am so stinking excited about today's skill builder. Um, we are going to be looking at reveal text, and we're going to look at three different types of text reveals. So we're going to look at three kind of cool ways and incorporate some skills we did before, all about revealing text. So here's a preview of where we're headed. So that gives you an idea of just the few skills we're going to highlight. And so a couple of tips before we get started, just like we've talked about all along, remember to design first. That always stands. Have that design plan. And then I want to mention, like, animation is so intricate. Make sure that you have text approved, script approved, images approved as separate pieces before you start animation. When you're working with clients, that's just going to save you a lot of headache and heartache. Also, there's nothing worse than having the best animation in the world and then realizing you spelled things wrong. So with animation, where you do so much action on the back end, make sure that front end has everything lined up and you're ready to go. So our main skill, we're going to review setting up comps. Look for a few more things with those comps, kind of adding to your knowledge every single time. We're going to add our text and create our scenes first. So it's kind of an interesting workflow I'm going to show you today. With that text, we're going to have an image. We're going to do some special effects on it. Then we're going to animate each of those scenes before we go into masking the text. We're going to look at three types of text masking, as I mentioned earlier. We're going to do a track mat, a pen tool, and a handwriting effect. Finally, we're going to combine all those scenes together and have some additional reveals. So I would suggest taking some notes while I demo, and then we'll have our practice session. So I have two files for you to download here. One is your asset files. Your asset files include the three photos and the font I'm using today. The AEP project file shows you the final work, so you can kind of break it down and see inside. I think that's always a fun thing to do. So I added that for you. For our practice after the demo, I'm just going to have you try one of the reveal techniques. So just experimenting almost with one scene to get you there. And then we'll get that session recap after we're done. So let's hop over to After Effects. And here we go in After Effects. So this is that After Effects project file that I've included for you to download so that you can break down each scene, see what it looks like. And to break each scene down, you just need to double click it. And then you can see that individual scene, start working with that. So here's our main comp with those text reveals, the swipes, and then that handwriting technique. So that's where we're headed today. So I'm going to close this project down, and I'm going to start a new project here. We're just going to save this as. All right. So to get us started, we're going to go ahead and create a new comp, and we're basically going to create three comps and then put them together in a fourth. So new composition, and we've done this before. I'm going to name it scene 1. We've talked about our aspect ratio and how we could lock or unlock that. I'm going to leave this at 1920, 1080 with those square pixels, but I did want to mention frame rate this time. So while we've talked about our orientation sizes, we haven't really talked about frame rate. So frame rate is the number of frames per second. Now, for our purposes, we're just working in After Effects, so being at 30 is fine. Let's say I was creating an animation and then it's going to go into video. I need to make sure that my frames per second here match my footage. If they don't, what's going to happen is Premiere, probably where we're going to take that, is going to drop frames. So let's say I designed this at 30, but my actual footage was at 23,976. That means it's going to drop a little over 6 frames. So it's going to kind of look jumpy. It's going to look really weird. So just wanted to explain frame rate a little bit more to you. We're going to do a duration of 15 seconds on this, although that might change later, and we're going to leave this gray. I'm going to hit OK. So we have scene 1 ready to go. So I'm going to bring in my assets. So I'm just Command I, and I've got my 3 photos, my campanile, my strong hall, and my sunflowers. I'm going to hit open. And so one of the things you might want to consider while you're designing this After Effects project is keeping things organized. So I can create new folders over here in my project folder. So if I wanted to create one that's called Assets, I can go ahead and just move those photos in there. And so kind of keeping that nice and clean. So our very first one is going to be with a sunflower image, and it's going to be that rock chalk. So let's go ahead and get our type in there first, and then we'll bring in our image. So I'm going to grab my type tool. And again, if I were doing client work, I would want to make sure that I've spelled things correctly. Trouble, there we go. Seeing that. Oh, we've got all kinds of crazy things. Let's put this on screen. All right. I'm going to decrease the size here. And so one of the things you want to consider is, what is your title safe area? Like, where's that video falling? And by default, you don't have that title safe area on there, but you can access it. So at the bottom of your composition window, you can just click Title Action Safe. And so where I want my text to fall is between those black lines. So I'm just going to bring this font size down just a little bit. Now it's going to remember my last selection. So once I get this set, I'll be able to design all the other screens without any problem. Now the other thing you want to think about is how your text is going to animate. And in this case, we're actually going to animate the 2 words separately. So I actually want to have those be separate text blocks. So I'm just going to Command X. And then I'm going to grab my type tool again, create a new text box. 2 over there. And we're going to add our other text here. So now I have 2 text boxes, and I can make sure that they are aligned using my Align panel. If you don't see your Align panel, just go to Window and Align, and that'll come up. So I'm just going to align these to the bottom, and I am happy with that. Now that I've checked where my text is, actually I'm going to bring this down just a skosh. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and turn off that title action safe area. So I've used that, and now I can hide that. Now there is a reason why I chose this font. This font was selected because the very last technique that we do, the handwriting technique, is easier on a pretty simple font. And so this was a pretty simple font that was also pretty cool. So just being really honest about my design choices here. Now I'm going to drag in that sunflower image and move it to the bottom of my stack. And I'm going to add a solid over this, and that's going to kind of create that color effect. So I'm going to go to Layer, New, and Solid. And I'm going to create, it's going to be the same size as the comp, but I'm going to change this color. I want it to be like kind of an orangey color. So I'm going to hit OK. So this is my orange solid. I could rename that Rock Chalk if I wanted. I'm going to hit OK. Now it's covering up my photo, but this is where I'm going to use my modes. So down right on that same orange solid layer where it says normal, I'm going to change my mode, and I can experiment with all kinds of different modes. I like that multiply. I think overlay is what I did originally. That's kind of cool. Let's see that multiply again. Let's do multiply this time. So that's a way you can kind of bring in color looks. This is also a way if you have very differing kind of photos or videos, you can give them kind of the same look or effect. Now, if you aren't seeing all of these options down here in your layers, just Control click and make sure that you have those in your columns, okay? All right, so we've got our very first layer solid, and we're gonna animate the sunflower picture. So selecting that sunflower layer, I'm gonna hit S for scale, and I'm gonna have this scale, let's say, from here, and then we'll make it bigger. So I'm gonna have my start right here, click that timer. I'm gonna go down a couple of seconds. You it's right about there. And we're gonna say just a little bit. We don't want a lot of scale on this. We're also gonna add that easy ease. So again, practicing that, selecting both of my keyframes, Control, keyframe assistant. I'm gonna add the easy ease. So that means I have an ease out and an ease in on these. Then I'll go to my graph editor. And what I wanna do is just kind of smooth these out. So I want it to be pretty fast at the beginning and then slow down at the end. So let's see what that looks like. Awesome. Okay. So we have scene one basically designed. We're going to go ahead and design our other two scenes. Then we're going to come back and do our text reveal. So to set up our next scene, all I need to do is go to Composition, New Composition. I'm going to call this scene 2, hit OK. So for our second scene, we're going to add our text and again bring up that title safe area. The other reason why we're designing our scenes all at once is so that you can kind of see that repeated and feel very comfortable with that scene. So there's my Jayhawk. I'll turn off my title safe. I'm going to add my strong haul footage or photo, excuse me. Get him aligned in there. Oh, I keep selecting the wrong one. I added a V in my Jayhawk too. We'll fix that. Not the JV Hawk. All right, so I got my strong haul photo, and now I'm going to add another layer, solid. So layer, new and solid. And this time we're going to make it a blue. And I like that. Hit OK. So there's my blue. Back to my layer mode. Last time we did multiply. I think that's a little too dark for this photo. So let's look at overlay. Yeah, I kind of like that. So there's our overlay. And now we're going to animate this. Now, when you animate these, you kind of have to choose, like, do I want them all the same? Do I want them a little bit different? How do I want these? So in this case, and again, I'm going to do a scale on this photo. So I just hit S to bring up my scale. And this time I'm going to, let's say, try to think about how I want this to look. Actually, I want this to start a little bit bigger. So we're going to have it start about right there. And then we're going to go down a few seconds. And we're going to be at 100. Okay, so now we've got just that little effect right there. Okay, so next, scene 3. So same thing, and I'm just going to point out, there's scene 2, or scene 1, scene 2. So I've got those all layered in here. So new composition, scene 3, accept the same defaults. This time we're going to have our KU. And this one is going to get to be bigger. So let's bring in our title action safe. And we're going to really make this big. There we go. Kind of get that in the center there. I'll turn that off. And so this one is going to get the Campanile photo. And we'll add our layer solid. And this time I wanted to show you, I'm going to grab my eyedropper and I can color pick from my photo. So if I wanted to pick that red color in the sun, just select that and hit OK. And I've got that photo. Just need to rearrange my layers here. Got so excited about designing, I forgot. All right, so with that deep red solid selected, let's play with, ooh, and I like that. So a little soft light on that. Really kind of bumps up a lot of the reds, especially in the darker regions down there. Yeah, I'm liking that. All right, so again, we're just gonna animate this photo. So I'm just gonna hit S for scale. This one I'm gonna start out small, and at about 2 seconds, we're gonna have it enlarge. So I'm liking that. So this is our effect, just kind of a subtle, and we're gonna add our easy ease on that. I think I forgot to do that on the last one. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, kind of slowing down at the end. I like that. All right, let's come back and we'll fix these because we forgot to do those keyframes. So again, selecting those keyframes, Control Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease, into our graph editor, and slow this down. We just have that little effect. So I like that. All right, so now we're going to go back to scene 1. We have all of our designs ready to go. And now we can concentrate only on our text animation. So our first text animation is going to be what's called masking with track. So we're going to add some solids in here and use those to kind of create our mats. I'm going to move my playhead to the beginning. I'm going to go layer, new, and solid. And this time I want it to be pure black. And what I want is for this to be all zeros. So don't make a mistake and be up here. Make sure you're all zero. So it has to be 100% pure black. Hit OK. We're going to let it be named black solid. And so we've added a black solid here. And I'm going to just move this up to the top. So I've got my solid. Actually, let me just do this and just move it all the way up here. Make sure I haven't wiggled it around. So there's my first layer solid, and I'm actually just going to copy and paste it. So select it in my layers, copy and paste it, and then this one's going to go down here. I can use my arrow tools to just get that into perfect position. So now I'm going to select, so shifting and clicking both of my solids, and I'm going to control or right click and go to pre-compose. So I can just leave this pre-comp, but I'm going to name it matte. That just lets me know that this is my matte that I'm using. So I'm going to hit OK. On my text layer, so my first layer that I'm going to animate is actually, let's just switch these around. Let's animate rock first. So underneath my layer, under this track matte, I can choose what I'm going to matte it with. So let's watch what happens when I have alpha matte on. My text disappears until I drag it into that area. Okay, I just Command Z'd. We actually want to use the inverted matte so that it hides and then appears. So I'm going to say that at a little past 2.5, actually, let's do a little bit forward. So it's kind of moving with that image. So about right here, I'm going to hit P on my keyboard. That's the position of rock. Move my playhead. I'm going to move this up. So now we have this. And I would, and I'm just kind of trying to be aware of our time, I would also mess with the keyframes and the graphs as we have done before on this, but I want to kind of move on and show us what we need to do for the chalk and the rest of these. So I'm going to take my pre-comp matte and I'm going to copy and paste that layer. That's going to go down above chalk. Same thing as I did last time. I'm going to have my alpha inverted so that, whoopsie, when I have chalk selected, I can reveal and hide chalk. And so we're going to get this position so that it's even with rock. And I want it to come in just a little bit after. So again, with chalk selected, I'm going to hit P for my position. It's there. Move my playhead back. I'm going to drag chalk down, and it will start there. So our entire scene right there. And I think I need to tweak the timing just a little bit here. And again, we would definitely need the easy ease added in there, but I think we're okay with that. So that's just using our track mats. So let's go ahead. We've got everything good on that scene. So I'm going to hit save, just make sure we're saving. And let's go on to scene 2. So with this scene, we're going to actually use this Jayhawk as a mat, and we're going to use our pen tool to create that. So what I'm envisioning is my text comes in from this side and just reveals over here. I could have it come in from any side, but I think that's going to be kind of a cool look. So I actually need to make sure I have room for that. So I'm just going to move this photo. Whoopsie. Let's move that solid back into position. Move both my, or at least my photo. Let's move my photo. There we go. I'm just watching where the edge of that photo is. And I also want to keep an eye, remember we have this scale. So if I move this photo and have this scale, this actually might not work. And this is part of what you find when you start animating. Ideas that you had may not work. So we're going to exaggerate this animation a little bit. So I'm going to have this animation start a lot larger, and I'm going to have it end a lot larger too. So we're gonna have it end at 119-ish. There we go. So now we have that zoom. Let's get that one. There we go. So now we've kind of tweaked our zoom. So I'm just gonna check that, make sure I don't do anything wacky. Oop, he got crazy. I think I added an extra. Let's just delete that one. So right there, we're gonna have it be 120. There we go. Okay, so we've got that fixed. Now we're gonna use our pen tool to actually mask on top of the text. So notice I have my text layer selected. I'm gonna grab my pen tool and I want to mask in my Jayhawk, okay? And so I'm just gonna do a rough pen tool and I'm clicking and adding these points. And so I want to be aware of where that Jayhawk is landing. And I'm just continuing around to right there. So you can see where my mask is falling, and it's actually messing a little bit with my Jayhawk. We're going to see if I get it shifted, not a problem. We'll just move this little point right here, and boom, now we have Jayhawk. So now we need to move our text in consideration of this mask. And you can see there's the mask we just added in there. So now we're going to work with the position of our text. So at this point, let's have our text be right where it is. But we're going to start it. Grab my text and not my mat. Why are you moving with it? You should not be moving. Hold on. Let's get our, undo a couple of these steps because I should have moved that text first. That's my mistake. Move first, mask later. Okay, so there he is. He's gonna start over here. All right, so that moves in, fabulous. Okay, and so then we will mask it. Excellent, so back to our pen tool. And I'm on that layer. And I'm just gonna mask around this area. I'm just gonna creep in right there. Oops. Now I know what I'm doing wacky. I need to pre-compose this. I am so sorry. So let's right click and pre-compose. So we've got that. There we go. Now it's moving. And now we will mask on that pre-composition. Okay, trying this again. Always forget those little steps. So don't forget to pre-compose on your mask, which I remembered in the last one, you know, but you can't forget your pre-compose there, Heather. So I've got my mask. And so as I move in here, there's our animation. We have a little zoom. It's going to take a bit to format here. And there's our text. And so you can see it just kind of emerging from the Jayhawk. And one of the things I wanted to point out to you is both with the track mats we used on this scene and with the pen tool on this one, you can apply these in different ways. So I could use the same pen tool technique and have one set of text come out from another. I can use those masks, the track mats that we did in different ways. So these are all techniques to experiment with. All right, so our final technique over here in scene 2 is the handwriting technique. And so let me explain a couple things about the handwriting technique. The handwriting technique requires you to use text that you stroke with the pen tool. So if you're not very familiar with using the pen tool, something that has a lot of curves and loops and may look exactly like cursive handwriting can be a little hard to do. Not to mention, if you have different weights of stroke, you actually have to break those apart in Illustrator and have those in separate layers, kind of like we did that first week to make those work. So I chose a very simple starter font for us. So we're going to use our pen tool to trace our text, and then we're going to create an animation. So on my type layer, and I'm going to zoom in on this so we can see pretty easily what I'm doing. So I'm happy with that. So I'm on my pen tool. And what I want to do is trace these letters and think of it as exactly how you would write. So I would go from top to bottom, and then I would do another line here. So I don't do a continuous line. This is a new line. And so I'm going to do a letter from here, a line from here to here. And then I'm going to deselect. To deselect, I'm hitting the Command key. And then I'm going to do another one from here to here. And Command, because I picked up my pencil. And I did give you a little U, so you're going to get a little practice with pulling out a direction handle. So in this case, I'm pulling and clicking, and that's what gives me that curve. So it's a click and a drag gives you that direction handle and straight up to the top. So this is one continuous line, and then I have 3 in the K. So I'm really thinking about it in terms of how I actually write. Then I'm going to go up to Effect and Generate and Stroke. So now I've generated a stroke effect, and you can see my effect controls coming up here. And I'm going to say all masks because these are all the different, those 4 lines are all my masks. So I'm going to say all masks. I do want them to stroke sequentially. Now, a couple things I want to point out. Again, think about how you actually write. If I had a T in here, I would go clear to the end, then I would cross my T's and dot my I's, because that's how we actually write. So I'm going to have my paint style reveal the original image. Now my goal is to get this stroke to look as much like the original text. So I'm going to increase my brush size. And I'm specifically looking at these areas right here and these areas right here. So this is the cool thing about this technique, is I can zoom in here and tweak these points. So this one needs to shift just a little bit right there. And you see how that's kind of helping that weirdness that we were getting there? And here, we're going to just shift this up over here. Much better, much more clean. And we're going to do the same thing down in this area as well. So let's use our zoom tool and zoom into these curves. So again, grabbing my selection tool, and I can just tweak these direction handles so I get a little bit better of a curve in here. I'm liking that. So we've got those all cleaned up. And now I can decide the hardness. So as I change this, you get a little bit of a softer or a harder edge on that. So that's worth playing around as well. So the next button we're going to play with is the start, or excuse me, the end point. So let's fit this back on our screen. And let's look at that previous animation. So about right there is where I want this to be filled in. So I'm going to hit the end, right in my effect controls. And then I'm going to come over here and have that be my start. So what I get is just the way we would write. Okay. So that is all set as well. So we've got our 3 scenes designed. So now we're ready to put this all together. So we're going to do our final composition, and we're going to call this our main comp. You can also name it final, just to let you know this is the final one. So in our main comp, we're just going to bring our 3 scenes in. So we have scene 1, scene 2, and scene 3. Now, if I want to edit these, I can just go back and edit each of those scenes. But look how nice and clean everything is in my layer stacks now. So we obviously want to time these in. So that's why scene 1 is at the bottom, because I'm going to take these 2 scenes and I'm just selecting them and moving them down a little bit. And we're just going to gradually bring these in. So we'll play through this scene. And that's good. So I'll bring in scene 2 at this point, and we'll play through that. We're gonna need to move this one down a bit. And there's our next scene. And then we'll bring in our final scene. So if we play this through, it looks pretty cool, but we could have it be even more cool using the same techniques we've used before. So we're going to use that track mat that we created before. So I'm going to go into scene 1 and I'm going to add a black solid. So layer, new solid, making sure that it's the 100% black. That's going to go right here. Actually, it's going to go up because it's going to be between these scenes. There we go. Notice how I've got it positioned with scene 2. So let's move over here. So there's our black solid. I'm going to set scene 1 to the alpha. And I'm going to move I'm still on that black solid. I'm going to move it to the right. So we're going to have it positioned. I think I want it there. And then we're going to move it right over here. So let's see if we got that and just get that into position. All right, so we're here. Reach the end of that. There's our swipe. And so all we did was create that little swipe right there. Super fancy with that layer solid. Now again, because you know I love to be lazy, I'm going to take this solid, I'm going to copy paste it. I'm going to drag it on top of scene 3. I'm going to align it right with scene 3. I'm going to even copy its position with it. So now we have that and that, that, and we need to work on our swipe here. Let's play with this a little bit. Let's clear these out. Why is it not? That's weird. Oh, because I need the box solid track mat on it. There we go. And there's that final swipe. So you can see we've got that final swipe in there as well. So, and I know that was a lot of techniques. At this point, I have everything comped and I'm ready to just export that out like we did before. So file, export, add that to my render queue. Out I go with that. So I am going to go ahead and pause my recording.